Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the custom post. He said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. While he was at table in his house, many tax collectors and sinners came and sat with Jesus and his disciples. The Pharisees saw this and said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" He heard this and said, "Those who are well do not need a physician, but the sick do. Go and learn the meaning of the words, 'I desire mercy, not sacrifice.' I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners." The Gospel of the Lord. I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners. Jesus would seem to be excluding the righteous from his salvation. But of course, that's the opposite. The whole point is he is addressing the Pharisees who thought they were righteous, who could not recognize in others their goodness and the potential for goodness and the need for salvation. Rather, they were pleased to hypocritically point a finger at them and judge them and condemn them and not offer them any kind of way out of their sinful life. And therefore, they were perhaps guilty of the most grievous sin, the sin of pride and arrogance, the sin of not recognizing that I am a sinner. Jesus, of course, came to save all men and women because all of us are sinners, without exception. And we can only close ourselves off to that salvation which he offers us when we do not acknowledge our sinfulness, do not ask for his forgiveness. Because then I am closed off to his grace. It is he who sanctifies. It is he who alone can allow us to grow in holiness. And so it requires first that we acknowledge that we are sinners, even though sometimes we may go the other extreme and think that we are such an awful sinner that there's no way God would ever save us or love us. I have heard that too. When I was studying in Rome, and I lived there for 5 years, one of my favorite churches to visit, I usually went at least once, if not twice or more, to that church. Not to go to Mass there because we had Mass at the Casa Santa Maria where I studied, but to visit precisely Caravaggio's painting of the Call of Matthew. It was like a magnet that drew me. And you see in the shadows Jesus extending his hand and calling Matthew, who is sitting at the tax collector's table. And Matthew looks startled with his face like, "Me? Are you kidding?" He did not think that he was worthy to be called. But when Jesus indeed calls him, he leaves everything behind and follows him and becomes one of our greatest apostles, and through him we have a gospel. we are reminded, especially in this time where sin seems to be old-fashioned, the idea that we are sinners, that there is an absolute, objective, true and false, right and wrong, has been substituted by a relativism, which in the end becomes a subjectivism. It's right for me. I'm okay. You're okay. We all are free to do whatever, as long as it feels good. And never mind the harm that I do to myself or to others in the process. In this context, it becomes even more important that we acknowledge that Jesus calls each one of us, all of us, sinners. That it does not depend on our talents, our ability, or our righteousness, but on His grace. That anything we can achieve, we can achieve only because of that grace. I'm not worthy is the other extreme. Well, who the heck is worthy? Only Jesus Christ and our Blessed Mother. Only they were sinless. And so we need to look at them. They were blessed with the Spirit. They chose always the right over the wrong. They cared not so much for themselves as for others. They sought to do God's will in every aspect of their lives, even when this seemed difficult, incredible, impossible, as it did to Mary, even when this called for being nailed to a cross, and to shed your blood and give your life up for a bunch of ingrates who are mocking you and playing dice over your clothing. We are called to this holiness, and we cannot possibly achieve it if it is not by God's grace. Because as sinners, we need His forgiveness. We need His compassion and His mercy. And we need to reflect that in our own lives, in how we treat others, regardless of whether we think they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, to be treated with any kind of affection or care. We're called to love. Love those who do not love us. Love those who are our enemies. Because it is in this that we imitate Jesus Christ. Let us ask the Lord through this Eucharist that we may grow in that kind of love, that we may never become so self-righteous that we do not acknowledge our own sinfulness, and that we do not judge and criticize others as sinners. Because when we point a finger at someone, there's 4 others pointing back at us. That we always humbly acknowledge our need for forgiveness. And when we see somebody doing something wrong or evil, let us pray for them. Let us ask the Lord that we may have that kind of compassion in our hearts.